Well, we are back with another exciting week of reading through the Messianic Jewish Family Bible Tree of Life version, TLV. And this week, we are going to go through the rest of Genesis. We have Genesis 37 to 50, and this is for Monday, February 17th, 2020. And chapter 37 begins with Parashat Vayeshev, and that is a whole Torah teaching. So the Torah teachings that are involved in these chapters that we're going to read are actually four of them. They would happen on four separate Sabbaths, four separate Saturdays, um, but we're reading them today. So they're Vayeshev, and that means, and he dwelt, and that will be Genesis chapter 37, verse 1 to chapter 40, verse 23. Then we have Miketz, and that means at the end. That's Genesis 41, 1 to 44, 17. And then we have Vayagash and came near. We have Genesis 44, 18 to 47, 27. And Vayaki is, and he lived. And that would be Genesis 47, verses 28 to chapter 50, verses 26. And that will conclude the book of Genesis. So it's very exciting. We have had some really, really exciting stories in this book. We've gone from creation, we've gone to the Great Flood, we've gone to the rebuilding. We've had some pretty dynamic stories that are building as we go on. And in this section of Genesis 37 to 50, we've got the story of Joseph. And Joseph is a type of Yeshua, just to give you a heads up on that. And we're going to talk about that as well. So when we open these chapters up, we have, starting with Joseph is the favored son. Then Joseph is betrayed. And then there is a little section on Judah and Tamar. And then Joseph succeeds in adversity. He becomes prophetic and is interpreting dreams. And then he's exalted by Pharaoh. And then he reconciles with his brother and they get together with his father. And then his father actually gives his blessing to his sons and his grandsons and the children, and he passes on. And then at the very end, we have Joseph passing on as well. So this is where we're going with the reading today. Lots of things going on. But before we do that, I always open that. I want to open this with prayer and invite the Holy Spirit in to guide this teaching, because that's the best way to do things. And I want the Holy Spirit's guiding um, this entire session. So Father God, thank you for the ability to record this, for the ability to read your word that is at our fingertips, that we can dig deep in your word. And Holy Spirit, come guide us. Show us what it is that we need to learn today, as we are in your word, what is pertinent, what is important to us today, what message that you want to deliver to us, because we treasure it. We treasure your word. Your word is so precious to us. And thank you for your word. In the mighty name of Yeshua, Jesus, amen and amen. So we're going to get started. We're going to dig in, and we're going to start with chapter 37. Okay, chapter 37, Joseph, favored son. Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father had sojourned in the land of Canaan. These are the genealogies of Jacob. When Joseph was 17 years old, he was a youth, he was shepherding the flocks with his brothers, with the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah. Joseph brought back a bad report about them to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his other sons, because he was the son of his old age. So he had made him a long-sleeved tunic. Whether his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him, and they could not speak to him in shalom, in peace at all. So he made him a coat of many colors, is what he did. Then Joseph dreamed a dream and told his brothers, and they hated him even more. He said to them, "Please listen to this dream I dreamed. There were binding sheaves in the middle of the field. All of a sudden my sheaf arose and stood upright, and behold, your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf. Will you truly be a king over us?" His brothers said to him, "Will you really rule over us?" So they hated him even more because of his dreams and because of his words. But then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers, saying, "I have just dreamed another dream. Suddenly there was the sun and moon and the 11 stars bowing down to me." He told it to his father as well as his brothers. Then his father rebuked him and said to him, "What's this dream you dreamed? Will we really come, your mother and I, with your brothers, to bow down to the ground to you?" So his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept this speech in mind. So Joseph is betrayed. Then his brothers went to graze their father's flock at Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, "Aren't your brothers grazing the flocks in Shechem? Come, let me send you to them." "Here I am," he said to him. Then he said to him, "Go now and check on the welfare of your brothers and the welfare of the flocks, and bring word back to me." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he went to Shechem. A man found him there, wandering in the field, and the man asked him, "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my brothers," he said. "Please tell me where they're grazing." The man said, "Well, they moved on from here, for I heard them saying, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. Now they saw him from a distance before he was close to them. They plotted together against him in order to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes the master of dreams. Come on now, let's kill him and throw him into one of those pits so we can say that an evil animal devoured him. Then let's see what becomes of his dreams." But Reuben heard and rescued him out of their hands, saying, "We must not beat him to death. In order to rescue him from their hand and to return him to his father, Reuben said to them, 'Don't shed blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him.'" So as soon as Joseph came up to his brethren, they stripped Joseph of his tunic, the long sleeved tunic that he had on, the coat of many colors. Then they took him and threw him in the pit. Now the pit was empty, with no water in it. Then they sat down to eat bread. When they looked up, behold, there was a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with their camels carrying gum, balsam, and myrrh, going to bring them down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit if is there if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come on, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let's not lay our hand on him, since he's our brother, our own flesh." His brothers listened to him. When some men, Midianite merchants, passed by, they dragged Joseph up and out of the pit, and they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes. Then he returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where should I go?" So they took Joseph's tunic, slaughtered a billy goat, and they dipped the tunic into the blood. Then they sent the long sleeved tunic, and it was brought to their father, and they said, "We found this. Do you recognize whether or not it is your son's tunic?" He did recognize it and said, "My son's tunic. An evil animal has devoured him. Joseph must be torn to pieces." Jacob tore his clothing and put on sackcloth and mourned for his son many days. All his sons got up along with all his daughters to console him, but he refused to be comforted. He said, "For I will go down to Sheol to my son mourning." So his father kept weeping for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold him into Egypt to Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh, the commander of the bodyguards. So Sheol is a grave, or hell, is a deeper meaning of Sheol, just to let you know that. So this is really interesting. We open this chapter up with action right away. Um, Jacob was dwelling in the land where his uh, father was a stranger in the land of Canaan, and Joseph was not liked by his brothers, and he was a little bit arrogant at that point too with his dreams, saying, "I'm going to rule over you," and basically, and you know, my sheaves are better than yours and stronger than yours. So they really, and that made them hate him all the more. So they wanted to kill him actually, but Reuben is the one that saved him from being killed. Reuben actually was going to return him to his father. That was the idea. Put him in the pit here, and then when his brothers were busy and occupied, he was going to free him and send him home to his father. But they sold him before that could even happen. So, and they actually sold them for 20 pieces. They betrayed him for 20 pieces of silver. And just a little heads up, we're going to go over the similarities between Joseph and Yeshua. And Yeshua was betrayed for 30 pieces of silver. So it's been the silver that's they both were betrayed for a price. So he was sold to merchants and he was sold down into Egypt. So chapter 38 is about we're going to change the scene here and we're going to be talking about Judah and Tamar for a little bit before we go back to Joseph. About that time Judah went down from his brothers and he camped near an Adulamite man whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite man whose name was Shua. And he took her as a wife and slept with her. Then she became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and he named him Er. She became pregnant again and gave birth to a son, and she named him Onan, Onan. Then she gave birth yet to another son, and she called him Shelah, Shelah. He was in Chezib when she gave birth to him. Then Judah got a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was evil in Adonai's sight, so Adonai put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, go to your brother's wife to perform the duty of a brother-in-law to her and raise up a seed for your brother. But Onan knew that the seed would not be his, so every time he went to his brother's wife, he would destroy it on the ground so as not to provide a seed for his brother. What he did was evil in Adonai's eyes, so he put him to death also. We're going to talk about this, what happens when um, they're surviving brothers and the husband of the husband dies and there's surviving brothers and what happens with widows and things like that. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, stay as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up, because he thought otherwise he too might die like his brothers. So Tamar went and stayed in her father's house. Now the days became many, and Shua's daughter, Judah's wife, died. Judah's wife died, and after Judah consoled himself, he went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers, and he and his friend Hira, the Adulamite. Then Tamar was told, look, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his flocks. And she removed her widow's clothes from herself, covered herself with a veil, wrapped herself, and sat by the entrance to the springs on the way to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah had grown up, and she had not been given him to be a wife to him, as was promised by Judah. So when Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute because she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her along the way and said, please let me sleep with you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. What? She said, will you give me to sleep with me? I will send you a young goat from the flock, he said, provided you give a pledge until you send it, she said. What kind of pledge shall I give you? He asked. Your steel, and your cord, and your staff in your hand, she said. So he gave them to her, and he slept with her, and she got pregnant by him. And she got up and left. She removed her veil from herself and put on her widow's clothes. When Judah sent the young goat by the hand of his friend the Adulamite to take back the pledge from the woman's hand, he could not find her. He asked the men of her area, saying, "Where, where's the harlot?" Basically, she was at the springs along the way, but they said, there hasn't been a cult prostitute here. There hasn't been a harlot here at all. So he returned to Judah and said, I couldn't find her. And the people of that place said, there hasn't been a cult prostitute there. There hasn't been a harlot there. Then Judah said, let her take them for herself, or we'll be held in contempt. Behold, I did send this young goat, but you couldn't find her. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law Tamar has been the prostitute. Look, she's even pregnant by prostitution. And she was being brought out. As she was being brought out, this sent word to her father-in-law, saying, I'm pregnant by the man to whom these belong. Then she said, Do you recognize whose these are? The seals, the cords, and the staff. Then Judah recognized them and said, She is more righteous than I, since I didn't give her to my son Shelah. He was not intimate with her again. Now, when it was time for her to give birth, behold, there were twins in her womb. While she was giving birth, one stuck out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it to his hand, saying, This one came out first. But as he was pulling his hand back in, behold, his brother came out. So she said, How you have broken through. The breach is because of you. And named he named him Perez. Afterward, his brother, on whose hand was the scarlet thread, came out, and his name was Zerah. So we got Perez, Perez, and we have Zerah, Zerah, and these were twins. And I'll be coming back with part 2 shortly.